For more than 2,000 years, there's been this one short book that's been this secret weapon for generals, CEOs, you name it. But here's the thing. It's not really just about winning on a battlefield. Sun Tzu's The Art of War is basically a masterclass in how to navigate conflict in every single part of our lives. And it all kicks off with a really strange and honestly, a pretty brutal test. So imagine this. A skeptical king asks Sun Tzu to prove that his wild theories are actually legit. And this is the test he gives him. It's a story that, believe it or not, perfectly captures the brilliant and kind of brutal heart of his entire philosophy. So to prove his methods weren't just a bunch of fancy ideas on a scroll, Sun Tzu actually took on the king's bizarre challenge. And what happened next? Well, it became a legendary lesson in authority, discipline, and the deadly serious consequences of being in command. Okay, so Sun Tzu gets to work. He splits the women into two groups, and, get this, he puts the king's two favorite concubines in charge as officers. He explains a few dead simple commands. He gives the order to turn right, and is met with a wave of giggling. They totally think it's all just a game. Now this is where it gets really interesting. Sun Tzu doesn't lose his temper. He doesn't shout. Instead, he blames himself. He says, look, if the orders aren't understood, that failure is on the leader. I mean, that is some next-level accountability. So he calmly and patiently explains the simple commands all over again, making absolutely sure everyone gets it. He gives the order a second time, and they burst out laughing again. But this time, everything's different. The orders were crystal clear. The fault was no longer his. With the commands now perfectly clear, Sun Tzu declared that the failure to obey fell squarely on the officers, the king's two favorites. And to the king's absolute horror, he ordered them to be executed right then and there. The message couldn't have been more clear. Disobedience has the ultimate consequence. So when the drill started again, there was no laughter. The remaining women moved like a single unit, following every single command with silent, flawless precision. Sun Tzu told the king they could now go through fire and water. He had proved his point. With clear commands and absolute discipline, any group can become a seriously effective force. That wild story, though, it isn't just about harsh discipline. It's really pointing to a much, much deeper idea in Sun Tzu's philosophy, that the most critical part of any conflict happens long before the first punch is ever thrown. See, for Sun Tzu, battles aren't really won with brute force on the day of. They're won, or they're lost, because of superior planning beforehand. He really believed you could predict victory or defeat with incredible accuracy, but only if you did all the intellectual heavy lifting first. And he even gives us a checklist. Before you do anything, a leader has to look at these 5 factors for both sides. Is your team on the same page? Are the conditions, the heaven or timing, on your side? Do you get the earth, the terrain you're operating in? Is the leadership actually competent? And is your whole organization disciplined? The side that scores better is probably going to win. Simple as that. And this all builds up to his most famous piece of advice. Complete knowledge is your ultimate weapon. If you truly understand your own strengths and weaknesses, and you understand your opponents inside and out, you basically become invincible. It's not about being stronger, it's about being smarter. So, if you can actually calculate the outcome ahead of time, what's the perfect result? For Sun Tzu, the answer is kind of surprising. The greatest victory you can have is achieving your goal without ever having to fight at all. He straight up says that winning all your battles is not supreme excellence. True mastery is breaking the enemy's will to fight without fighting. Sure, winning is great, but winning at zero cost, keeping all your resources and coming out whole, that's the mark of a real genius. Sun Tzu even gives us a ranked list of strategies. The absolute best thing you can do? Miss up your opponent's plans before they even get started. The next best? Cut them off from their allies. Actually fighting their army is only the 3rd best option. And the absolute worst thing you can do? A bloody, costly, head-on attack against a fortified position. Okay, so if charging straight ahead is a last resort, how are you supposed to operate? Well, to explain this, Sun Tzu uses this really powerful and elegant metaphor for what a brilliant strategy should look like. Just think about it for a second. Water has no fixed shape, right? It just adapts to whatever container it's in. It flows around big obstacles, and it always finds the path of least resistance. Your strategy, Sun Tzu says, should do exactly the same thing. So what this means in practice is you don't slam head-on into your opponent's greatest strength. You flow around it, you look for their weaknesses, and you strike right there. Your tactics have to constantly change depending on the situation. You can never let yourself become rigid or predictable. And what's the #1 tool that lets you be like water? Deception. Sun Tzu is super blunt about it. All warfare is based on deception. By misleading your opponent about what you're doing, about your strengths and your weaknesses, you create the very openings you need to hit them where they're most vulnerable.
So how on earth did these ancient battlefield principles manage to basically conquer the modern world and stay essential reading thousands of years later?
I mean, the journey of this text is just incredible. For centuries, its wisdom was this closely guarded secret over in East Asia. It wasn't even translated into a European language until the late 1700s, and it really only became this global phenomenon in the 20th century. And now it's required reading for generals, CEOs, and leaders of all kinds.
And the reason it's so timeless is because these principles are totally universal. In the business world, it's all about outplanning your competition. In sports, it's finding and exploiting the other team's weaknesses. And even in our own personal goals, it's about finding the smartest, most efficient path around whatever's in your way.
When you really boil it all down, The Art of War isn't a book that celebrates fighting. Not at all. It's a guide to understanding conflict so deeply that you can get through it with intelligence and efficiency, getting what you want while doing the least amount of harm to everyone. And that leaves us with the final, most important question Sun Tzu wants us to ask ourselves. The highest skill, the supreme excellence, is to win without ever having to fight. So, take a look at your own challenges, at work, at home, whatever you're trying to achieve. Where can you win, not by fighting harder, but by thinking smarter?